the city of dreams, where fame and fortune cast their seductive glow, a darkness festers beneath the surface. Los Angeles, a place synonymous with Hollywood glamour, has long been a stage for both dazzling triumphs and unspeakable horrors. From the Black Dahlia to the Manson murders, this city has seen its share of atrocities. But in 2016, a crime so grotesque, so unimaginable, unfolded that it shocked even those hardened by LA's grim history. This is the story of Blake Leibel, a man born into unimaginable wealth, a comic book writer whose dark fantasies bled into reality. And it's the story of Iana Kasian, a vibrant young woman whose life was stolen in an act of pure, unfathomable evil. Her murder, described by authorities as one of the most brutal in Los Angeles history, is a chilling reminder that monsters don't always lurk in shadows. They can hide behind privilege, charm, and a multi-million-dollar fortune. It was May 2016 in a sleek West Hollywood apartment where the unthinkable took place. The address, once a symbol of luxury and aspiration, became a house of horrors. Blake Leibel, a 35-year-old heir to a Canadian real estate empire, stood at the center of this nightmare. His victim was Iana Kasian, a 30-year-old Ukrainian model, a woman whose beauty and ambition had brought her to the heart of LA. She was the mother of Leibel's newborn daughter, a child barely weeks old when her world was shattered. What happened to Iana in that apartment is not just a crime. It's a descent into a level of depravity that defies comprehension, a story that will grip you, haunt you, and leave you questioning the depths of the human soul. Iana Kasian was more than a model. Born in Ukraine, she carried dreams as big as the city she called home. Her striking features and graceful presence landed her modeling gigs, but those who knew her spoke of her warmth, her resilience, and her fierce love for her newborn daughter. Iana had come to Los Angeles seeking a better life, a chance to carve out her own story in a city that promised endless possibilities. She was a woman who radiated hope, even in a world that could be unforgiving. But in Blake Leibel, she encountered a darkness she could never have anticipated. Blake Leibel was a man who seemed to have it all. Born into a family of immense wealth, he was the son of Lorne Leibel, a Canadian real estate mogul and former Olympic sailor who amassed millions through his company. On his mother's side, Leibel inherited a fortune tied to a plastics empire founded by his grandfather. Money was never a concern. Leibel received a staggering $18,000 a month in what he casually called Papa Pay, a financial cushion that allowed him to chase his creative ambitions without restraint. He wrote and directed films, including a TV adaptation of Spaceballs and a lesser-known project called Bald. But his true passion lay in graphic novels, where his imagination roamed free, perhaps too free. His work, particularly a graphic novel called Syndrome, revealed a mind drawn to the macabre, the violent, the unthinkable. Syndrome was no ordinary comic. It was a descent into the psyche of a neuropathologist obsessed with fixing evil behavior, a story steeped in violence and psychological torment. One page, in particular, stands out. A drawing of a woman's hand, drenched in blood, accompanied by the chilling words, "In the end, we all become monsters." Prosecutors would later argue that Syndrome wasn't just fiction. It was a blueprint, a map to the horror that would unfold in that West Hollywood apartment. Disturbingly, the novel featured exsanguination, the act of draining a body of blood, the very method of Iana's death. Was this a coincidence? Or had Leibel's dark fantasies crossed the line into reality? To understand how this tragedy unfolded, we must go back to 2015, when Blake Leibel's life seemed to be a gilded dream. He was married to Amanda Braun, a former model, and the couple had one child with another on the way. Leibel's wealth afforded them a life of luxury, and his creative projects were gaining traction. But beneath the surface, something was unraveling. Just 2 weeks before Amanda was due to give birth to their second child, Leibel walked out. He left his pregnant wife, his family, and the life they'd built, chasing something or someone new. That someone was Iana Kasian. Iana and Leibel's paths crossed in 2015, a chance meeting that sparked a whirlwind romance. She was drawn to his charisma, his wealth, his creative ambition. He was captivated by her beauty, her grace, her spirit. Their relationship moved at breakneck speed. Iana moved into Leibel's West Hollywood apartment, a sleek, modern space that symbolized their shared aspirations. Soon, she was pregnant with their daughter, a baby girl who would arrive in the spring of 2016. For a moment, it seemed like a fairy tale, a love story set against the backdrop of LA's glittering promise. But fairy tales can hide nightmares, and this one was about to turn deadly. The first cracks in their relationship appeared just weeks before the murder. In early May 2016, Leibel was arrested for an alleged sexual assault. The details of the case are murky. Few specifics have ever been released. What we do know is that Leibel was released on a staggering $100,000 bail, a sum he paid without blinking, thanks to his family's fortune. The case quietly dissolved, but the arrest left a mark. Iana, shaken by the allegations, made a heart-wrenching decision. She took their newborn daughter and left the apartment, seeking safety with her mother, Olga Kasian, in a nearby home. For a brief moment, it seemed Iana had escaped whatever darkness was brewing in Leibel's world. But Leibel wasn't ready to let her go. He reached out, his voice soft, persuasive, asking to talk. He wanted to see his daughter, to mend what had been broken. Iana, perhaps hoping to salvage some piece of their shared dreams, agreed. She returned to the West Hollywood apartment, her baby safe with her mother. It was a decision born of trust, of hope, of love. It was also a decision that would cost her everything. 3 days passed without a word from Iana. Her mother, Olga, grew increasingly frantic. Phone calls went unanswered, texts unread. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. On May 26, 2016, Olga contacted the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, her voice trembling as she begged for help. Deputies arrived at the apartment. Their knocks met with an eerie silence. When they forced their way inside, they were unprepared for the horror that awaited. The apartment was a slaughterhouse. Blood coated the walls, the floor, the furniture, a crimson testament to an unspeakable act. In the bedroom, they found Iana Kasian's body, lying motionless on the bed. Her face was concealed by a Mickey Mouse blanket, a grotesque mockery of innocence. The scene was chaos and carnage, the air thick with the metallic scent of blood. In another room, barricaded behind furniture, was Blake Leibel. He was calm, detached, as if the nightmare around him was someone else's story. Their infant daughter, mercifully, was not in the apartment. Safe with Olga, unaware of the tragedy that had just claimed her mother. The Los Angeles County Coroner's Office was called to the scene, led by Dr. James Ribe, a veteran forensic pathologist who'd seen the worst of humanity's cruelty. But nothing could have prepared him for what he found. In his testimony, Dr. Ribe's voice carried the weight of disbelief, his words a chilling echo of the unimaginable. "I have never seen this before," he said, "and I doubt hardly any forensic pathologists in this country or abroad have even seen this outside of, perhaps, wartime. It's extremely rare." Iana Kasian had been tortured for hours, alive and conscious through an ordeal that defies comprehension. Her scalp, the entire surface of her head, had been removed, stripped down to the bone with surgical precision. Only a small patch of skin remained at the back of her neck, a cruel remnant of what had been taken. Her skull gleamed white beneath the coroner's lights, a sight so alien, so horrifying, that it seemed torn from a nightmare. Bite marks marred her lower jaw, jagged and savage. Part of her right ear was missing, torn away in an act of primal violence. Other parts of her body bore the marks of mutilation, wounds that spoke of a deliberate, sadistic intent. Dr. Leibel estimated that Iana endured at least 8 hours of this torment, her heart pumping desperately as her body fought to survive. The cause of death was exsanguination. She bled out, her life draining away drop by drop, her body unable to withstand the trauma of her injuries. The parallels to Leibel's graphic novel were impossible to ignore. Syndrome wasn't just a story, it was a mirror to the crime. Exsanguination, the rare and deliberate act of draining a body's blood, was a theme woven into Leibel's work. The prosecution would later argue that this wasn't a coincidence. Leibel hadn't just imagined violence. He'd planned it, rehearsed it in the pages of his fiction, and then brought it to life in the most horrific way possible. The question lingered like a specter. Had Iana's murder been the culmination of a fantasy Leibel had nurtured for years? The investigation moved swiftly, but the horror of the crime left even seasoned detectives shaken. The apartment was a treasure trove of evidence, blood patterns, DNA, and signs of a prolonged struggle. Leibel's barricade in the second room suggested he'd had time to contemplate his actions, to sit with the reality of what he'd done. Yet his demeanor was chillingly composed, his silence a wall that investigators couldn't breach. As they dug deeper, they uncovered a man whose life was a study in contradictions. Wealth and privilege juxtaposed with a mind drawn to the darkest corners of human behavior. To understand Blake Leibel, we must look to his roots. Born in Toronto, Canada, he was the son of Lorne Leibel, a man whose ambition and drive had built a real estate empire. Lorne was a former Olympic sailor, a competitor who thrived on challenge, and his success afforded his family a life of luxury. Blake's mother, meanwhile, came from a family tied to a plastics fortune, a legacy that added millions to the Leibel name. Blake grew up in a world where money was no object, where his every whim could be indulged. By his 30s, he was receiving $18,000 a month in Papa Pay, a term that spoke to the casual entitlement of his existence. This wealth funded his creative pursuits, from graphic novels to films, but it also insulated him from consequences, creating a bubble where his darkest impulses could fester unchecked. Leibel's creative work was a window into his psyche. Friends and colleagues later spoke of his fixation on violence, particularly against women. He would discuss themes of sexual abuse and torture in ways that left people uneasy, his words laced with a disturbing intensity. One friend, speaking to People magazine, described it as deeply uncomfortable, a glimpse into a mind that seemed to revel in the grotesque. Maybe he did have a break, the friend said, but there is no question in my mind that extreme violence and torture have been part of his creative ideation for many years. At comic conventions and industry events, Leibel's ideas were often met with raised eyebrows, his graphic novels dismissed as too extreme, too unsettling. Yet he persisted, pouring his wealth into projects like Syndrome, a work that now reads like a confession. On June 20, 2018, Blake Leibel faced justice. The trial was a spectacle, a collision of wealth, privilege, and unimaginable horror. Prosecutors painted a damning picture, arguing that Leibel's graphic novel was a roadmap to murder, that his actions were premeditated, deliberate, and sadistic. They presented Dr. Leibel's testimony, his clinical descriptions of Iana's injuries chilling the courtroom. Photos of the crime scene, too graphic for public release, were shown to the jury, their faces blanching as the reality of the crime sank in. Leibel, meanwhile, sat stoically, his expression unreadable, as if the proceedings were happening to someone else. The evidence was overwhelming. Leibel was convicted of first-degree murder, mayhem, aggravated mayhem, and torture, with special circumstances involving a deadly weapon. The charges carried the possibility of the death penalty, but Judge Mark E. Wyndham sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a fate that ensured he would never walk free. As the verdict was read, Olga Kasian, Iana's mother, broke into sobs, her grief a raw, palpable force in the courtroom. For Olga, the conviction was a bittersweet victory, a step toward justice for her daughter, but no sentence could erase the pain of her loss. Iana's daughter, now in the care of Olga, is the light that remains from this tragedy. Barely weeks old at the time of her mother's death, she will grow up knowing Iana only through stories, photos, and the love of a grandmother determined to honor her daughter's memory. Olga filed a $56 million wrongful death lawsuit against Leibel, a legal battle that brought to light chilling documents, including depositions from the coroner's office. The lawsuit was more than a quest for financial compensation. It was a stand for Iana, a way to ensure her story would not be forgotten. The murder of Iana Kasian is a wound in the fabric of Los Angeles, a crime that stands apart even in a city no stranger to horror. The medical examiner's words linger like a ghost. It's extremely rare. Blake Leibel, a man who had everything, wealth, talent, opportunity, chose to become a monster, his actions a betrayal of every privilege he'd been given. His graphic novel, once a niche curiosity, is now a chilling artifact, its pages stained with the blood of reality. What motivates someone to kill? The question haunts us, its answers as varied as the human heart. For Blake Leibel, the answer may lie in the darkness he nurtured, the fantasies he fed, the line he crossed when imagination became reality. Was it anger, obsession, or a break from sanity? Or was it something colder, more deliberate? A need to enact the horrors he'd spent years imagining? We may never know, but the cost of his actions is clear. A life stolen, a family shattered, a city scarred. Iana Kasian deserved better. She was a dreamer, a mother, a woman whose light shone bright in a world that can be so cruel. Her story is a tragedy, but it's also a call to remember, to honor her life, to protect those still vulnerable, to confront the darkness that hides behind wealth and privilege. In the end, Blake Leibel's name will fade, a footnote in the annals of infamy. But Iana's memory will endure, carried by those who loved her, by a daughter who will one day know her mother's strength, and by a city that will never forget. This is the story of a crime that shook Los Angeles to its core, a horror that defies understanding, and a woman whose life was stolen too soon. It's a story that will stay with you, a reminder that even in the city of dreams, nightmares can become reality.